A signature on a piece of paper holds immense power. It can build an empire or shatter a life. For Katherine Bishop, a woman who built her architectural design firm, from the ground up, her signature was a symbol of her strength and success. She never imagined that her husband, the man who stood by her side, would use that same power against her. He took her trust, her money, and her company's name to purchase a breathtaking ruby-red Porsche Cayenne. It wasn't a gift for her, but for his mistress. But he made one catastrophic mistake. He registered the luxury car under his wife's company, turning his secret gift into a corporate asset and a weapon she would soon turn back on him. Katherine Kate Bishop believed in structure. It was the foundation of her life and the cornerstone of her success. As the founder and principal architect of Bishop Designs, a firm celebrated for its minimalist yet soulfully warm commercial spaces, she created order from chaos. Her days were a meticulously planned ballet of client meetings, site visits, and blueprint reviews. Her office, a glass-walled sanctuary overlooking the city, was a testament to her philosophy. Clean lines, natural light, and an unwavering focus on the essential. Her life, she thought, mirrored her work. It was strong, beautiful, and built on a solid foundation. That foundation had a name: Gregory Wallace. Greg was her husband of 10 years, a man whose charm was as effortless as his smile. While Kate was the architect of their life, Greg was the decorator. He handled the social calendar, charmed potential clients at fundraising galas, and ensured their home was a welcoming haven from the high-stakes world Kate navigated daily. He called himself a freelance business consultant, a title ambiguous enough to cover his fluid schedule and modest, if any, income. Kate never questioned it. She was the earner, the builder. He was her support, her soft place to land. It was a partnership that on the surface worked perfectly. Lately, however, tiny hairline cracks had begun to appear in that foundation, so small that Kate, consumed by a massive new hotel project in Dubai, had barely noticed them. There were the late nights Greg attributed to networking, the hushed phone calls he'd take on the balcony, the faint, unfamiliar scent of perfume that sometimes clung to his suit jacket when he came home. She'd dismissed them as products of her own exhaustion. She was tired, overworked. She was probably just being paranoid. "Big day, sweetheart," Greg asked one evening, greeting her at the door with a glass of her favorite Chardonnay. He kissed her cheek, a gesture that felt more practiced than passionate. "You have no idea," Kate sighed, sinking into a plush armchair in their immaculately designed living room. "The Dubai team is questioning the load-bearing capacity of the atrium's glass panels. I spent 3 hours on a video call convincing a German engineer that my math is in fact correct." "Well, you're always correct when it comes to math," he said smoothly, massaging her shoulders. "That's why you're the boss." He paused, his hands stilling. "Speaking of which, I might have a new lead for you. A big one." Kate's interest was piqued. "Oh. Who?" "His name is Davies. He's in wealth management. Very old money. Very discreet. I met him through a contact at the golf club. He's looking to build a new family office headquarters. He wants something that screams power and stability, but without being gaudy." Sounded right up your alley. "It does," Kate admitted. "Can you get me a meeting?" "That's the thing about guys like Davies," Greg said, moving to refill his own glass. "They don't do formal meetings. It's all about relationships, trust. I've been laying the groundwork for weeks. He's a car guy, a big one. Appreciates grand gestures. I think to really get his attention, to show him the kind of world-class bespoke service Bishop Designs offers, We need to make a statement. Kate frowned slightly. What kind of statement? A corporate gift. Greg said, his voice casual, but a significant one. Something that shows we understand his level of taste. He's been eyeing the new Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT. Kate nearly choked on her wine. Greg, that's a $200,000 car. And Davies's project is potentially a $20 million contract for you. He countered, his tone placating. Think of it as an investment, Kate, a line item under client acquisition. You spend a fraction of that on marketing and advertising every quarter. This is targeted. It's a sure thing. I'm telling you, this is how business at that level is done. He made it sound so reasonable, so strategic. Kate, whose mind was still half occupied with the structural integrity of a Dubai skyscraper, ran the numbers in her head. The cost was high, but the potential return was astronomical. Greg had brought in clients before charming them at dinners she was too busy to attend. He was good at the social side of the business, the part she found draining. Maybe he was right. I don't know, Greg. It feels extravagant. And we'd have to put it through the company books. Exactly. It's a business expense, he insisted, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. We register it to Bishop Designs. It's completely legitimate. Davies gets the use of the car. We get the contract, and the company gets a new asset on its books. It's brilliant, really. She looked at him, at his handsome, earnest face. He was trying to help her, trying to contribute to the empire she had built. How could she question that? Her own exhaustion was clouding her judgment. She was too tired to argue, too tired to see the subtle shift in his gaze from persuasion to predatory triumph. Okay, she said, slowly, the word feeling heavy in the air. Fine. Talk to Robert at accounting in the morning. Have him arrange the purchase. But Greg, she added, fixing him with a serious look, this Mr. Davies had better be the real deal. Don't you worry, Greg said, his smile waning as he leaned in to kiss her again. This time, it didn't feel practiced at all. It felt like a seal on a contract she hadn't been allowed to read. This is going to be the biggest deal of your career. I promise. And as Kate drifted off to sleep that night, her dreams were filled not with architectural marvels, but with the unsettling image of a sleek, expensive car driving away from her, disappearing into a fog she couldn't penetrate. The Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT was not merely a car, it was an event. It arrived at the dealership under a silk cover, a predator waiting to be unveiled. The color was a custom order, a deep, scintillating ruby red that seemed to shift and shimmer under the showroom lights. Tiffany Reed watched, her heart thudding in her chest as Greg signed the final pieces of paperwork. He'd told her to wait in the glass-walled client lounge, but she couldn't resist creeping closer, drawn to the spectacle. All set, Mr. Wallace, the dealership manager, said, handing Greg a sleek leather key fob. A beautiful choice. For your wife, is it? Greg laughed, a smooth, practiced sound. It's a corporate vehicle. For a very important client. He glanced over at Tiffany and winked. Tiffany's smile was radiant. For the past 6 months, Greg had been her world. He was handsome, generous, and moved with an air of wealth and importance she found intoxicating. He'd promised her the world, and now he was delivering it one luxury good at a time. This, however, was on another level. This wasn't a handbag or a pair of designer shoes. This was a statement. This was a symbol that she, Tiffany Reed, had truly arrived. When the manager discreetly moved away, Greg walked over and dangled the keys in front of her. "For my most important client," he whispered, his voice a low purr. "Oh, Greg," she breathed, throwing her arms around his neck. "It's perfect. It's more than perfect." "Only the best for you, Tiff," he said, his hands tracing the curve of her back. "Just remember the story, okay? If anyone asks, I'm consulting for your new influencer marketing business. And this is a company car to help you get around to meetings. Whatever you say, boss." She giggled, snatching the keys. She didn't care about the story. All she cared about was the feel of the supple leather interior, the thunderous roar of the engine as it started, and the jealous stares she would get her as she drove her new chariot through the city. She had no reason to question the details. Greg handled the details. She just enjoyed the rewards. Meanwhile, miles away in the sterile, quiet offices of Bishop Designs, Robert Miller was questioning every single detail. Robert was a man of 60 with thinning grey hair and reading glasses perpetually perched on the end of his nose. He had been Kate's accountant since she was a one-woman operation working out of her spare bedroom. He viewed the company's finances with the fierce protectiveness of a father guarding his child. He stared at the invoice from the Porsche dealership, then at the wire transfer confirmation. The amount made his stomach clench. He ran his finger down the expense code 45B, Client Acquisition and Relations. It was technically the right category, but the sum was unprecedented. He pulled up the company's vehicle asset ledger. They had a fleet of 5 sensible hybrid sedans for site managers and a black town car for client transport. The addition of a $205,450 high-performance SUV stuck out like a sore thumb. He picked up his desk phone and buzzed Kate's assistant. "Brenda, is Katherine available for a moment? It's regarding a significant Q3 expenditure." A few minutes later, Kate's voice came through the speakerphone, sounding distant and preoccupied. "What is it, Robert? I'm in the middle of the Dubai schematics. My apologies, Katherine, but I have an invoice here for a Porsche Cayenne. Greg Wallace authorized the purchase this morning under the client acquisition code. I just wanted to confirm with you directly before I file the final asset registration. It's a substantial amount." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Robert could hear the faint rustle of papers. "Yes, Robert. I'm aware of it," Kate finally said, her tone weary. "Greg is handling a very sensitive acquisition. It's for a potential client, a Mr. Davies." It was a necessary gesture to secure the contract. Robert frowned. "Mr. Davies, I don't see any preliminary file or non-disclosure agreement for a client by that name. It was his job to know every potential contract, every whisper of new business. It's being handled discreetly, Robert. Off book for now, until it's signed. Greg is managing the relationship. Just process it. I trust his judgment on this." The words, "I trust his judgment," hung in the air. Robert had never trusted Greg's judgment. He saw Greg for what he was, a charismatic leech with expensive taste. But he worked for Kate. His loyalty was to her. If she signed off on it, his job was to process it. "Very well, Katherine," he said, his voice clipped. "I will register the vehicle under the Bishop Designs corporate name as a fixed asset." "Thank you, Robert." The line went dead. Robert slowly hung up the phone. He opened a new file on his computer, Vehicle Asset V07. Make Porsche, Model Cayenne Turbo GT, Color Ruby Red Metallic. Registered owner, Bishop Designs, LLC. He entered the VIN, the purchase price, and the date. He felt a profound sense of unease, a cold dread that had nothing to do with numbers and everything to do with the man who had orchestrated this purchase. He had flagged his concern, and his boss had overruled him. He had done his duty. But as he saved the file, he also made a private copy of the invoice and the purchase agreement, dragging them into a password-protected folder on his personal drive. He didn't know why. He just had a feeling that this particular asset would soon become a very significant liability. For the next 2 months, life continued in its carefully constructed rhythm. The Dubai project demanded every ounce of Kate's focus, with late nights and pre-dawn international calls becoming the norm. The Porsche was a distant memory, a closed-out line item in a budget she had already forgotten. When she did remember to ask Greg about it, his answers were always vague but reassuring. "How are things going with Mr. Davies?" she'd ask over their rare shared dinner. Simmering Greg would reply, swirling his wine. "These guys move at their own pace. It's a slow dance. He loves the car, by the way. It was the perfect move. He sees that we speak his language. Don't you worry, the deal is in the bag." Kate, exhausted and distracted, would nod and accept his explanation. She wanted to believe him. It was easier to believe him than to entertain the sliver of doubt that pricked at the edge of her consciousness. But the doubt was persistent. The $20 million contract never seemed to move from simmering to signed yet. Greg's spending hadn't slowed down. If anything, it had increased. New designer clothes, expensive watches, and charges from exclusive restaurants she'd never even been to appeared on the statements for the joint account she barely had time to review. The first tangible thread of the unraveling came from an unlikely source: social media. Kate was scrolling through her phone during a tedious conference call, half listening to a debate about HVAC systems. A friend from college, a woman named Sarah, had posted a gallery of photos from a birthday brunch at Porsche, one of the city's most exclusive rooftop restaurants. Kate idly swiped through the pictures: smiling faces, elaborate cocktails, panoramic city views. Then she stopped. The third photo was a candid shot of Sarah laughing, and over her shoulder in the background was the restaurant's valet area. Parked front and center, gleaming under the afternoon sun, was a ruby-red Porsche Cayenne. It was the distinctive color that first caught her eye. But it wasn't the car that made her blood run cold. It was the woman stepping out of the driver's side. She was young, probably in her late 20s, with platinum blonde hair and a physique honed by expensive personal trainers. She was wearing a dress that likely cost more than Kate's monthly car payment, and sunglasses that hid half her face. But it was her air of smug ownership, the casual way she tossed the keys to the valet, as if the $200,000 machine were a mere trinket that struck Kate like a physical blow. This was not the wife of a discreet, old-money wealth manager. This was someone who craved attention. Kate's thumb zoomed in on the photo. The image became grainy, but the details were still there. The car was unmistakable. The woman was a stranger. It could be a coincidence, a voice in her head whispered. It's a popular car model, a popular color. But her intuition, the same gut feeling that told her when a building design was structurally flawed, screamed that it was not a coincidence. Her heart hammered against her ribs. After her conference call ended, she walked on unsteady legs to her office window, staring down at the city traffic below. She pulled out her phone again and called Greg. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice slightly out of breath. "Hey, honey. Everything okay?" "I'm fine," she said, her own voice sounding foreign to her ears. "Greg, I need the VIN for the company Porsche. The one for Davies." There was a split second of silence. The VIN. What for? Is something wrong? Our insurance company is doing a fleet audit. Kate lied, the words tasting like ash. They need to cross-reference all the vehicle identification numbers for the corporate policy. Can you just send it to me? Yeah, sure. I don't have it on me right now, he stammered. Davies has the car, obviously. I can try to get it from him later. No, that's fine, Kate said, her voice turning to ice. Don't bother him. Robert will have it on the registration paperwork. I'll just get it from him. She hung up before Greg could reply. Her hands were shaking. She buzzed her accountant. Robert, it's Kate. Can you please pull up the asset file for the Cayenne we purchased in August? I need the VIN. Immediately. Robert, ever efficient, had it for her in under 30 seconds. She scribbled the 17-digit alphanumeric code onto a notepad. Her next call was to a man she hadn't spoken to in years. A former police detective who now ran a high-end private investigation agency. Frank Morrison. A gravelly voice answered. Frank. It's Katherine Bishop, she said, her voice low and steady, despite the tremor in her hands. I have a problem. I think my husband is lying to me, and I think he's using my company to do it. I have a VIN for a car that is supposed to be with a client. I need you to find it. I need you to find out who is driving it, and I need you to be invisible. Understood, Katherine. Frank replied, his tone all business. Consider me a ghost. Send me the number. As Kate emailed the VIN to Frank, she felt a profound shift inside her. The weary, overworked wife was gone. In her place stood the architect, the builder, the woman who understood that before you could construct something new, you first had to survey the ruins of the old. And she had a terrible sinking feeling that her entire life was about to become a demolition site. Frank Morrison was a man who moved through the world's shadows. He was methodical, patient, and utterly detached qualities that made him an exceptional detective and an even better private investigator. For Frank, the 17 digits of the Porsche's VIN were a digital key. Within an hour, using a DMV contact cultivated over 20 years of favors, he had a name and an address. The car was, as Kate had stated, registered to Bishop Designs, LLC. But the primary driver listed on the insurance policy added by an online request 2 months prior was not a Mr. Davies. It was a Ms. Tiffany Reed with an address at the Venti, a new, obscenely luxurious high-rise downtown. Frank's first stop was not the apartment building, but a coffee shop across the street. He sat for 4 hours nursing a single black coffee, his eyes never leaving the building's gleaming valet entrance. Just after 3:00 p.m. his patience was rewarded. The ruby-red Porsche Cayenne slid up to the curb, and out of it stepped the platinum blonde from Kate's social media photo. Frank's camera, equipped with a powerful telephoto lens, began to click. He captured Tiffany handing the keys to the valet, the bored entitlement on her face. He photographed her walking into the building laden with shopping bags from Gucci and Chanel. This was not a woman using a discreet corporate loaner. This was a woman living a life of conspicuous consumption. The next phase was surveillance. For a week, Frank Morrison became Tiffany Reed's shadow. His unassuming sedan followed the gleaming Porsche all over the city. His lens documented her life, a life funded by a source she clearly took for granted. There were trips to 5-star spas, long lunches with other equally glamorous young women, and endless shopping sprees. The Porsche was her constant companion, a trophy she parked as conspicuously as possible wherever she went. On the 3rd day, Frank hit the jackpot. He followed Tiffany to a secluded high-end hotel bar on the outskirts of the city. She took a corner booth, ordered a glass of champagne, and waited. 30 minutes later, a man slid into the booth opposite her. It was Gregory Wallace. Frank's camera worked overtime. He captured the intimate way Greg leaned in to kiss her, a kiss far more passionate than the perfunctory peck he gave his wife. He documented Greg handing her a small velvet box from a famous jeweler. He photographed their hands intertwined on the table, their laughing faces the easy, familiar intimacy of lovers. They stayed for 2 hours, drinking and talking, their bodies angled towards each other in a private world of their own. But the most damning evidence came when they left. Frank watched from his car as Greg and Tiffany walked out to the valet. Greg took the keys to the Porsche, opened the passenger door for Tiffany with a flourish, and then got behind the wheel. The man who claimed his client, Mr. Davies, had the car, was driving it himself with his mistress in the passenger seat. Frank followed them. They didn't go back to Tiffany's apartment. Instead, they drove to a quiet, tree-lined street of historic brownstones, the very street where Gregory Wallace lived with his wife, Katherine Bishop. They parked 2 blocks away. What Frank witnessed next was the height of arrogance and betrayal. Greg and Tiffany engaged in a heated, passionate embrace inside the multi-$100,000 vehicle his wife's company had paid for just a stone's throw from the home he shared with her. The investigation continued for another week each day, bringing a new layer of deceit to light. Frank compiled a timeline cross-referencing everything with financial records Kate had given him access to. The dates of Tiffany's biggest shopping sprees corresponded perfectly with large cash withdrawals Greg had made from the joint account. The down payment for Tiffany's lavish apartment, Frank discovered, had come from an account Greg had secretly opened, funded by siphoning money from his and Kate's investments. The Porsche was not a one-off indiscretion. It was the crown jewel of a meticulously constructed secret life. Finally, Frank assembled his report. It was a thick, spiral-bound dossier filled with high-resolution photographs, detailed timelines, financial links, and a dispassionate factual summary of his findings. There was no emotion in the text, yet the story it told was one of complete and utter betrayal. It was a portrait of a man who was not just an adulterer, but a parasite systematically bleeding the empire his wife had built to fund a fantasy life with another woman. He called Kate. "I'm done," he said, his voice flat. "The report is ready. I can have it couriered to your office, or I can deliver it personally." "Personally," Kate replied, her voice a strained whisper. "Meet me at the office in 1 hour. Use the back entrance." Frank packed the report into his briefcase. He felt a familiar, weary sadness. He'd delivered dozens of reports like this over the years. He knew the look in a person's eyes when they were forced to confront a truth that would shatter their world. He was the messenger, the bearer of heart-breaking, life-altering news. And as he drove towards the sleek glass tower of Bishop Designs, he prepared himself to watch another foundation crumble into dust. The dossier landed on Kate's expansive mahogany desk with a soft, definitive thud. The sound seemed to echo in the cavernous silence of her office. Frank Morrison stood by the door, giving her space, his presence a quiet, somber acknowledgement of the moment's gravity. Kate stared at the plain black cover for a long moment, her hands resting motionless on her desk. It felt like a bomb ticking silently, waiting for her to arm it by simply opening the first page. Her breath hitched. Part of her wanted to tell Frank to take it away, to burn it, to let her retreat back into the comfortable ignorance of the past few months. But the architect in her, the part that had to know the truth of a structure's integrity, won out. With a steady hand, she opened the report. The first page was a summary. Names: Gregory Wallace, Tiffany Reed. Relationship: adulterous affair. Assets involved: 1 2024. Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT VIN included real estate financial accounts. The clinical, dispassionate language was somehow more brutal than any angry accusation could have been. She turned the page. The first photograph was of Tiffany stepping out of the ruby-red Porsche. The same woman from the social media photo, but now in crystal-clear high definition. Her face, no longer obscured by sunglasses, was flushed with self-satisfaction. Page after page, the story unfolded in a horrifying tableau. Tiffany shopping, Tiffany at the spa, Tiffany lunching with friends, all with the car, her car, as a constant backdrop. Then came the pictures of Greg. Kate's breath caught in her throat. Greg and Tiffany at the hotel bar, his eyes alight with a kind of adoration she hadn't seen directed at her in years. Greg handing Tiffany the jewelry box, Greg getting behind the wheel of the Porsche. And then the final devastating image, the two of them locked in a passionate embrace, the familiar wrought iron fences of her own neighborhood visible in the background. The world tilted on its axis. The air in her lungs turned to lead. The grief was a physical force, a tidal wave that crashed over her, threatening to pull her under. It wasn't just the affair. It was the depth of the deception, the meticulous planning. The use of her own success, her own hard work, as the fuel for his betrayal. He hadn't just cheated on her. He had stolen from her. He had turned her creation, Bishop Designs, into an accomplice in his lies. Tears welled hot and furious, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of Frank. She closed the dossier, the sound snapping her back to the present. She looked up at the private investigator, her eyes clear and cold. The tidal wave of grief had receded, leaving behind something hard and unyielding. It was rage, but a quiet, focused rage. The kind of rage that builds cities and destroys them. "Thank you, Frank," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Your work is excellent. Please send me your final invoice." Frank gave a single understanding nod. "Kate," he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "If you need anything else, a referral for a good lawyer." "I have one," she cut him off. "Thank you." After Frank left, Kate sat in the silence of her office for nearly an hour, as the sun set, casting long shadows across the floor. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She planned. The part of her brain that could visualize complex structures and intricate blueprints took over. She was no longer a grieving wife. She was an architect, surveying a compromised structure, calculating the precise points where demolition charges needed to be placed for a controlled, efficient collapse. Her first call was to Jessica Chen, her corporate lawyer and one of her oldest friends. "Jess, it's Kate. I need to see you. Tonight. And I need you to bring your scorched earth briefcase." Her second call was to Robert Miller, her loyal accountant. "Robert, I need you to come to my office first thing in the morning, before anyone else gets in, and I need you to bring the complete file on that Porsche. Every single piece of paper." That night in Jessica's sleek, modern law office, the plan began to take shape. Kate laid out Frank's report on the conference table. Jessica, a sharp, pragmatic woman, with a mind like a steel trap, read through it without a word, her expression growing progressively harder. Robert, summoned for his financial expertise, analyzed the bank statements and asset ledgers Kate had brought. "He's an idiot," Jessica said, flatly, closing the dossier. A charming, handsome, breathtakingly arrogant idiot. He registered a $200,000 vehicle purchased with company funds in the company's name. Robert added, shaking his head in disbelief. From a legal and financial standpoint, that car belongs to Bishop Designs as much as the desk you're sitting at, Kate. He thinks he's untouchable. Kate said, her voice low. He thinks I'm too busy, too distracted to ever notice. He sees my success not as our success, but as his personal resource to be tapped. Then we will disabuse him of that notion, Jessica said, her eyes glinting. First thing tomorrow, we create a firewall. We need to protect the company's core assets. Robert, I want you to work with me to immediately freeze any accounts Greg has signatory access to. We'll flag it as a potential external security breach to avoid raising his suspicion for a day or two. Done. Robert nodded. Kate Jessica continued, turning to her friend. You will not confront him. Not yet. You will go home, and you will act as if nothing has happened. We do not move until every piece is in place. He's the one who built this house of cards. We're just going to choose the time and place to pull out the bottom one. Kate looked at her friend, at her loyal employee, and for the first time that day, she felt a flicker of something other than pain or rage. It was strength. It was control. Greg had mistaken her focus for weakness, her trust for blindness. He was about to find out that the woman who could design a skyscraper could just as easily design a ruin. The quiet storm had passed. Now the hurricane was coming. The next few days were an exercise in masterful self-control for Kate. She went home each night and played the part of the devoted, overworked wife. She listened to Greg's fabricated stories about his day, about the frustratingly slow progress with the elusive Mr. Davies. She'd nod, murmur her support, and ask no probing questions. It was the most difficult performance of her life. Every smile felt like a grimace, every shared meal a charade. Greg, blinded by his own arrogance, noticed nothing amiss. He simply saw the same wife he'd been taking for granted for years. The first tremor hit on a Thursday. Greg was at a high-end menswear store, picking out a new suit for a gala he planned to attend with Tiffany. When he handed the cashier his platinum credit card, the supplementary card on Kate's primary account, it was declined. "I'm sorry, sir," the young cashier said, avoiding eye contact. "It's showing do not honor." "Do you have another form of payment?" Greg's face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and annoyance. "That's impossible. Run it again." The cashier did. The result was the same. Flustered Greg tried another card, one linked to their joint checking account. It too was declined for insufficient funds. Fuming, he made a curt apology and left the store empty-handed. He immediately called the bank from the curb, his voice sharp with impatience. A polite customer service representative informed him that a potential security breach had been detected on the accounts and a temporary administrative hold had been placed on all cards and transfers. To lift it, the primary account holder, Katherine Bishop, would need to call in and verify her identity. "This is ridiculous," Greg snarled into his phone after hanging up. He tried to call Kate, but she didn't answer. She was in a meeting, according to her assistant, a meeting that consisted of her, Jessica, and Robert finalizing the next stage of their plan. Greg's irritation festered throughout the day. His attempts to take Tiffany to a lavish lunch were thwarted. His plan to buy her a new diamond bracelet was put on hold. He was, for the first time in a long time, financially impotent. He complained bitterly to Tiffany over the phone. "It's just some stupid bank error," he assured her, his voice tight. "Kate will sort it out tonight. Don't worry, baby. But Kate didn't sort it out. When she came home that evening, looking exhausted, she feigned surprise and frustration at the news. A security breach. Oh, for heaven's sake. I don't have the energy to deal with this tonight. Greg, I'm swamped. I'll try to call them tomorrow when I have a spare moment. His access to her money was cut off, and he couldn't protest without revealing how heavily he relied on it. He was trapped. The next day, Friday, the second, more powerful tremor hit. It arrived at Tiffany Reed's opulent apartment via a certified legal courier. Tiffany, who had been pouting about her cancelled lunch date, signed for the crisp, heavy envelope, assuming it was an invitation or a legal document related to her lease. She slit it open with a manicured nail. Inside was a single sheet of paper, printed on heavy bond, with the elegant minimalist letterhead of Bishop Designs, LLC. The words were cold, formal, and terrifying. Official notice for immediate return of corporate asset. To Ms. Tiffany Reed. This letter serves as a formal demand for the immediate return of a corporate asset belonging to Bishop Designs, LLC. The asset in question is a 2024 Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT Vehicle Identification Number, VIN inserted here. License plate, plate number inserted here. Our records indicate that this vehicle has been in your unauthorized possession. You are hereby instructed to return the vehicle and all associated keys to the corporate offices of Bishop Designs, LLC, at office address, no later than 5:00 p.m. on Monday, October the 20th, 2025. Failure to comply with this demand by the specified deadline will result in Bishop Designs, LLC reporting the vehicle as stolen to the authorities. We will pursue all available legal remedies to recover our property, including filing criminal charges for theft and unlawful conversion. This matter is not negotiable. Sincerely, Jessica Chen, General Counsel, Bishop Designs, LLC. The letter trembled in Tiffany's hand. She read it again, and then a third time. Unauthorized possession, stolen, criminal charges. The words swam before her eyes. This had to be a mistake, a horrible bureaucratic mix-up. Greg had given her the car. It was her car. Her hands shaking violently, she fumbled for her phone and dialed Greg's number. He answered on the first ring, his voice still laced with frustration from his financial woes. Tiff. What's up? What's up? She shrieked, her voice a high-pitched spiral of panic. I just got a letter. Greg, a letter from your wife's company. They're saying I stole the Porsche. They're saying they're going to call the police. There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. The silence of a man standing on a trap door the moment the lever is pulled. Greg. Greg. Are you there? Tiffany screamed into the phone. What is going on? You told me it was a company car for my business. You said this was all taken care of. Just calm down, Tiff. Greg stammered, his mind racing. He felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. Kate knew. How could she know? The bank freeze. It wasn't a security breach. It was her. It was all her. It's a mistake, a misunderstanding. Let me talk to Kate. I'll fix this. You'd better fix this, Greg. Tiffany sobbed. They're going to take my car. They think I'm a thief. As he hung up the phone, the bravado and charm that had been his lifelong armor evaporated, leaving him exposed and terrified. He looked around the life he had built, a life of luxury and leisure, and realized it was all owned by someone else. He had to go home. He had to face his wife. The trap so quietly and expertly set had been sprung. Greg drove home in a daze, his hands gripping the steering wheel of his own much more modest sedan. Every traffic light seemed to mock him, glowing red like the Porsche at the center of his impending doom. The casual confidence he normally wore was gone, replaced by a raw, gnawing fear. He had grossly underestimated his wife. He had mistaken her quiet focus for obliviousness. He had prodded a sleeping lion, and it was now very much awake. He found Kate in her home office, a space as meticulously organized as her corporate headquarters. She wasn't looking at blueprints. She was sitting behind her desk, her hands folded calmly on the polished surface. The dossier from Frank Morrison was laid out in front of her, open to the photograph of him kissing Tiffany in the car. The sight of it stole the air from his lungs. All his planned excuses, his practiced denials died on his lips. She knew. She knew everything. Kate. He began, his voice raspy. We need to talk. No, Gregory, she said, her voice as cold and hard as granite. You needed to talk. Weeks ago. Months ago. Now you're just going to listen. She stood up and walked around the desk, her movements deliberate and controlled. There were no tears in her eyes, no tremor in her voice. There was only an unnerving calm that was far more terrifying than any rage-filled shouting match could have been. For 10 years I believed we were partners, she said, her gaze pinning him to the spot. I built an empire, and I thought I was building it for us. While I was working 80-hour weeks, you were building a second life, a parasitic life, funded by my labor. It wasn't like that. He pleaded, his voice cracking. Tiffany. She meant nothing. It was a mistake. Kate let out a short, sharp laugh, devoid of any humor. A mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. A mistake is not systematically embezzling money from your wife to set your mistress up in a luxury apartment. A mistake is not using a $200,000 company asset purchased under false pretenses as a plaything for your girlfriend. She picked up the report and held it up. This isn't a mistake, Greg. This is a business plan. Your business. And it's just been declared bankrupt. He sank into a chair, his face pale. The letter. Kate, you can't. You'll ruin her. Ruin her! Kate's voice rose for the first time, laced with incredulous fury. She is an adult who accepted an extravagant gift from a married man without a single question about its origin. She is a consequence of your actions. You ruined her. You ruined us. All I am doing is protecting my company from a thief. I'm not a thief, he yelled, surging to his feet. Aren't you? She countered, stepping forward until she was inches from him. You stole my trust. You stole my money. You stole my future. You are the worst kind of thief, Greg. Because you did it all with a smile and told me you loved me. The fight went out of him. He collapsed back into the chair, a broken man. What do you want, Kate? He whispered. I want you out of my house. Tonight, she said simply. My lawyer will be in touch with yours regarding the divorce. Given the evidence of financial malfeasance and infidelity, I suspect the proceedings will be swift. You will leave with the clothes on your back and the car you drove here in. Nothing else. The joint accounts are closed. The credit cards are cancelled. Your free ride is officially over. While Greg's world was imploding, Tiffany's was in a similar state of collapse. Her panicked calls to Greg went straight to voicemail. The Monday 5 p.m. deadline loomed like a guillotine. She called her parents, her friends, anyone who would listen, sobbing out a convoluted story about a misunderstanding and a corporate car. But when the words stolen and police were mentioned, support quickly turned to suspicion. Monday afternoon arrived cold and grey. Tiffany, her face blotchy and swollen from crying, watched from her apartment window as a flatbed tow truck from a corporate asset recovery company pulled up in front of her building. A man in a uniform got out with a clipboard. He presented a document, a repossession order from Bishop Designs LLC, to the bewildered valet. Tiffany flew down to the lobby in a blind panic. "You can't take my car," she shrieked at the tow truck driver. "It's mine!" It was a gift. The man looked at her with bored indifference. "Ma'am, the paperwork says this vehicle is the property of a corporation and they want it back. It's registered to them. My job is to take the car. You need to take your personal belongings out of it now." Her public meltdown was spectacular. She screamed, she cried, she pleaded. Residents of the luxury building stopped to stare at the drama unfolding, but it was useless. The tow truck driver expertly winched the gleaming ruby-red Porsche onto the flatbed. Tiffany could only watch helpless as her ultimate status symbol, the chariot that represented her arrival, was unceremoniously chained down like a common wreck. As the truck pulled away, she saw a black town car parked across the street. For a moment, she thought she saw a woman with familiar, determined eyes watching from the back seat, before it smoothly pulled into traffic and disappeared. The fallout had only just begun, but the most painful cut had been delivered. The gift which was never truly a gift was gone, and with it the entire fantasy she had mistaken for her life. The aftermath was swift and mercilessly efficient. Greg, cast out from the gilded cage he had helped decorate but never owned, found that the world was a cold, hard place without Kate's money to soften the edges. His consulting business was a fiction, and his network of contacts evaporated the moment his association with Bishop Designs was severed. He hired a cheap lawyer who was completely outmatched by Jessica Chen's legal ferocity. The divorce was finalized in record time. The prenuptial agreement held firm, and the evidence of his financial infidelity negated any claim he might have had to Kate's assets. He was left with nothing but a mountain of debt he'd accrued in his own name. Tiffany's fate was equally bleak. News of the public repossession and the sordid affair spread like wildfire through her social circle. She was no longer the enviable girl with the rich boyfriend. She was a cautionary tale, the mistress who got played. Her so-called friends distanced themselves from her. Unable to afford the rent on her luxury apartment, she was evicted within a month. She was forced to move back in with her disappointed parents in a quiet suburb, the glamour and excitement of her city life reduced to a bitter memory. For Kate, the weeks following the confrontation were a period of reclamation. She had the locks on her home changed. She instructed Robert to conduct a full forensic audit of the company's finances, sealing every loophole Greg had exploited. It was a painful process, uncovering the full extent of his betrayal. But with each discovery, she felt another piece of her own power returning. The ruby-red Porsche was delivered to the secure garage at the Bishop Designs headquarters. Kate's employees buzzed with whispered rumors, but Kate addressed it only once in a senior staff meeting. "We have recovered a corporate asset that was misappropriated," she stated, her voice calm and firm. "It will be liquidated, and the matter is now closed." A week later, Kate stood in the garage looking at the car. It was still beautiful, a masterpiece of engineering and design. But to her, it was a monument to a lie. It was tainted. She wouldn't drive it, and she couldn't stand the thought of it remaining on her company's books. She made a call. The next day, a team from a high-end auto detailing service spent 8 hours cleansing the car, scrubbing every inch of the leather polishing, every surface erasing any physical trace of Tiffany and Greg. When they were done, it looked brand new, as if it had just rolled off the factory floor. Kate didn't sell it to a dealership. Instead, through Jessica, she arranged a private sale to an anonymous collector, ensuring it would simply disappear from the city. The wire transfer confirming the sale came through a week later, a sum of nearly $200,000. Kate looked at the number on her screen. It wasn't just money. It was restitution. It was closure. She instructed Robert to transfer the entire amount, every last cent, to a charitable foundation that supported shelters for women escaping abusive and manipulative relationships. The poison had been turned into an antidote. The symbol of her husband's deceit would now fund the freedom of other women. Months later, Kate was on a flight not to Dubai, but to Milan for a design conference. She was thriving. The Dubai project was a triumph, and new, even more ambitious contracts were pouring in. Her life was her own, again built on a new foundation, one she had laid herself with no cracks, no compromises. As she looked out the airplane window at the clouds below, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She had faced the ruin of her old life not with despair, but with a blueprint for a better one. She was the architect after all, and her greatest design was not a building of glass and steel, but the resilient, unbreakable structure of her own future. The story of Katherine Bishop is a powerful reminder that the deepest betrayals often come from those we trust the most. She built an empire only to have her partner try to hollow it out from the inside. But what he saw as an opportunity, she ultimately turned into her greatest strength. He gifted his mistress a luxury car, but it was registered in his wife's company name. A fatal mistake that allowed Kate to reclaim her power, her business, and her life. This wasn't just about a car. It was about the collision of deceit and intelligence, where the person who was meant to be a victim refused to play the part, and instead became the victor. What did you think of Kate's ultimate revenge? Was it karma, or was it just brilliant business? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were moved by this story of strength and retribution, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Thank you for listening.